Okay.
Alrighty then. Well, thank you very much for joining us in our presentation. My name is Divya, and my group members are Chris, and then we also had some team members who can't be with us today, Jeremy and Elizabeth. But we are going to discuss the topic of Amazon and their ethical leadership in their environment. So just a brief agenda about what we're going to talk to y'all. So first, we're going to give you some quick insights about Amazon just to make sure we're all on the same page. Then we'll talk about some leadership theories that are going to be important for us later on. Then we're going to compare the management styles of the US and Germany, as well as the working conditions and the role that labor unions play. And then finally, we'll go ahead and round it all off with our conclusion and a few recommendations for Amazon for moving forward. So just a little bit about Amazon. So I'm sure we're all familiar with that name. They are an American multinational technology company, and they're based in Seattle, Washington. They were founded in 1994 by Jeff Bezos, originally as like an online bookstore, but as we all know, they've expanded to offering pretty much everything under the sun that we can think of. Their main technologies, though, are focused on e-commerce, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, as well as digital streaming. And they're considered one of the big 5 companies in the IT industry in the US. Chris, can we go back one more?
Yes, sir.
Thanks. So just something important to know about Amazon is that they are considered one of the Earth's most consumer-centric companies. Their motto is the customer comes first, and that's what they really try to push for. And within the organization, they have a lot of hierarchy is what we found from our research. There's a lot of high standards, a lot of expectations that are expected to be met by all of the employees, no matter where they rank in that hierarchy. And that can tend to lead to a very competitive, almost cutthroat environment, which can also end up leading to a lot of violations in like the rights and taking advantage of employees. But that's enough about Amazon. So now I'll go ahead and tell you a bit about some leadership theories that we want to talk about. So the first one is regarding livable wages. So this can be looked at within 2 perspectives, mainly of ethics. One is like the utilitarianism view of ethics. Just go back one more. Yeah, thank you. To maximize utility, which means just get the most of what is given to you, get the most out of it. Then there's also the consequentialist point of view, which is that you want to aid the people that are worse off if you have more that you can offer. And that's specifically Rawls' point of view on that. There's also the theory of homo economicus, which is that humans, basically they have needs and then they have wants, but both of those are very important for their ability to survive on this planet. And finally, livable wages are greatly influenced by consumer decisions. So if consumers have more spending power, then they can give back to the companies, which then theoretically they can give back to their employees by offering more salaries, more raises. Next, we can go ahead and talk about rhetoric. So rhetoric is discussed in the Sage Handbook of Organizational Discourse. And basically, this is about the messaging that is sent out to the outside sources as well as the internal sources. So looking at like the public relations and the marketing strategies that are used. Companies have a lot of influence on public opinions and influencing public attitudes. And oftentimes employees within the organization are given the same exact messaging that the people on the outside are seeing. So not only are the employees receiving marketing, they're not knowing what's actually happening within the organization. So when situations do come up, they aren't really able to justify what is going on or speak the truth. Next, we can go ahead and talk about conflict mediation. So this is based on like social learning theory, which basically means that people look to others as role models to learn what is acceptable in a society. Within an organizational sense, this means that new employees and lower ranking employees are looking to their leaders and people who have been there longer to know what is okay to do. And this can affect the organizational structure if there's a lot of hierarchy, and it can also affect the ethical climate, because if the leaders themselves are not behaving ethically, then the new people will kind of follow their behaviors and not behave, in an ethical way. But in terms of conflict, there can also be self-efficacy. So if you know that you can finish a task, then you're going to trust your teammates to complete the task, and that can lead to less conflict. And overall, this just tests a manager's ability to listen and communicate and show interest in their employees' needs and desires. And finally, the last point I would like to discuss is the COVID crisis and how the corporate social responsibility was there from an organization to provide the safety of their employees. So in a lot of situations, there was not enough protections in place with social distancing or equipment that employees could use. And a lot of companies were even offering bonuses for employees who were willing to come in and take those extra shifts to recover like those people who were out sick or, just not willing to take the risk. And that we need to really understand is that in companies, is that their responsibility to make sure the employees are safe. But that's basically it. So now I'll hand it off to Chris and he'll compare the US and Germany in their management styles and so on.
Okay, so during our project, we found out that there were different perceptions and views on management styles in the US versus in Germany. And we found out that in the US, there is a huge emphasis on teamwork and creativity in the workplace. So that means that the manager wants the team to get creative and to come up with new ideas for the benefit of the company. Furthermore, managers in the US focus on the relationship amongst each other. They want them to work good together and to produce the best solutions for their company. In Germany, the managers also give a high level of independence to their workers and their subordinates. It is a fact that German managers can often handle more subordinates compared to American managers, but that's often not that personal like it is in the US. So furthermore, the German managers are perceived as communicating things very directly. That is also a kind of a cliche about Germany. And the entire workplace in Germany is basically more formal than in the US. So here you can see a list of some differences regarding working conditions. So both in the US and in Germany, general terms and working conditions are regulated by statutes, work council agreements, and collective bargaining. That's both in the US and in Germany. There are some minor changes regarding the minimum wage, which is $10.35 in the US, but it's the thing that some states pay increased minimum wages, not like that in Germany, because in Germany there is one minimum wage for whole Germany and it doesn't depend on the state. But there are indeed some major changes regarding the working hours and the working week. While there is not an imposed maximum of working hours in the US, there is indeed a statutory maximum working time of 8 hours in Germany and 40 hours per week. Furthermore, unless permitted by statutory law, working on Sundays and holidays in Germany is generally forbidden, but not in the US because there is not an imposed maximum of working days, even though several state mandates suggest that employers should at least get 1 day off. Okay, so now I'm going to be talking about unions. And first, to clarify, what is a union? So according to the Cambridge Dictionary, a labor union is an organization that represents the people who work in a particular industry, protects their rights, and discusses their pay and working conditions with the employers. So therefore, a labor union works in support of the employees and stands in for the employee rights. So there are also some differences in Germany versus the US, because in Germany, the 8 largest unions, you can see them here, are all unified under one umbrella organization, which is called the Deutscher Gewerkschaftsbund, which is the DGB, the largest confederation of labor unions in Germany and one of the biggest worldwide. So the DGB represents more than 5.9 million people, and the DGB fights for the rights of employees and aims at enhancing factors such as payment and working conditions. One memorable achievement was the introduction of a minimum wage in 2015, which have been made possible through the DGB. In the US, there is the NLRA, which is also which has been enacted in 1935 by the US Congress. It's the National Labor Relations Act, and it works in order to protect the rights of employees and employers. One goal, for example, had been to encourage collective bargaining and enhance the work relationship and situation between employer and employee. But the NLRA regulates only private sector unions. So in 2019, there had been 14.6 million US workers that were members of a union. So now there's the role of unions at Amazon, which has been very controversial in the past years, especially in Germany. The trade union Verdi, which is also a part of the DGB. is widely known for standing in for Amazon employee rights and has called for many strikes in the past years. So there have been claims against Amazon that they were paying too low wages, or especially by the warehouse workers that claimed that they had to work overnight and too many hours per week. So they had been fighting for them. And according to Amnesty International, there is evidence that the company Amazon is known for not recognizing and even forbidding their employees to join a trade union. Amazon itself answered to that and responded that it's not the case, and that they respect unions. So there are two questions now. So according to the international human rights, every employee is allowed to join or form a trade union. So Amazon has to respect those rights too. Furthermore, Amazon has the responsibility to respect human rights, which is articulated in the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. So according to the legal question, whether Amazon has to allow their employees to join or form a union can be answered with a clear yes. So therefore, it can be regarded as an ethical question, whether Amazon hires or even fires employees that are part of a union to further their working rights and fight for their wages. Yeah, and so in the past, there had been some human rights, some claims regarding human rights violations at Amazon, which included making the warehouse workers work overtime hours. And especially there has been a scandal at the Amazon supplier Foxconn. And the nonprofit organization China Labor Watch conducted their investigation in the Foxconn factory in Hengyang, China, and claims to have discovered multiple violations of worker rights. So those claims included workers who have been forced to work overtime, meaning employees had to work between 80 and 40 hours per week. And furthermore, it also has been claimed that the company paid low wages and employees have even been verbally abused during their working time. Those are the claims that the China Labor Watch made. Furthermore, Amazon has been criticized for not paying taxes in countries where they operate, but that's another case actually. Okay, now Divya, do you want to continue with the recommendations?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and finish it off. So as we just heard, we all know that there are these violations happening at Amazon, yet we continue to use them as a company. And that is because that they are so customer focused. They are very intact with like making sure that we get what we want, but at what cost? You know, is it worth seeing like people having to work all these exaggerated hours and stuff to make sure that we get our products the next day? So a few recommendations that we have for Amazon is to also give back to their employees while remaining customer focused. This really does need to come from like an internal organizational reshift. This can be done with the help of an outside agency where they come in to help managers and like the leadership really learn about how you can create a change in the organization. But they really do need to understand that every employee is also an individual in the end of the day and is a potential customer, and they need to focus on their internal employees as well. Amazon should also very much imply fair and consistent messaging throughout the organization and make sure that the internal employees know what's going on and why it's going on. So that way, when something, you know, like the Foxconn letter comes out, that they know how to justify that and to talk about what's actually going on. Again, acting as ambassadors for all the potential customers that they themselves as employees interact with. They should standardize their management practices. So we gave y'all a few examples of different management styles that are already existing. So they could basically imply like a basic, you know, standard that they expect all managers to lead by, and then they can add their own styles at the end of the day. And finally, the last recommendation that we do have is that they understand that their employees are having to take risks, while some employees are able to, you know, work from home and stay indoors. So for the employees that are taking more risks, give them a raise, just, you know, help them out a little bit. And in the end, this may help Amazon, you know, be a little bit more likable in the public's eyes. So that's basically all we have for you today. Thank you so much for your attention. And yeah, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Thank you again.
Thank you for the presentation. And my question would be, so thank you for highlighting, analyzing and highlighting the differences on example of Amazon and other aspects you mentioned between the US and Germany. In particular, I found it interesting about the attitude towards unions. Did you find, or could you describe a difference in the attitude of business leadership towards unions in the US and in Germany?
So in Germany, the unions play, as we discovered, a slightly bigger role than the US, because they have a very high influence here in Germany. And they are constantly calling for strikes and trying to further their working rights. That's why it is not really clear. I mean, it's not, the thing is that Amazon has been accused of like not allowing their workers to be there, to work there, but they're solving that problem right now. So they're working on it, and in the US and in Germany. So I think the perspectives for the future will be that Amazon will respect the union workers and the union rights, and that.
And just to add,
thank you.
Yeah, sorry. And just to add to that point, we've definitely noticed, like, just in our own experience, that like here in Germany, you do hear a lot about the strikes that Amazon workers are going on, whereas in the US, it's kind of like, it's not as public knowledge. Like, I've never had a package that wasn't delivered because the Amazon workers were on strike, whereas I've had that a few times here. So there is definitely a bit of a difference.
So you took a look at the warehouse workers. Amazon is a huge company with a lot of more people working for them. In the leadership style between US and Germany, as it is an American company with a lot of, I guess, leadership styles, definitions, which they use globally, have you experienced a different there as well, not just in the warehouse, but also in I don't know, they have programmers, they have marketing people. Is it on both sides, or is it more the warehouse side?
So regarding the strikes, those were more on the warehouse side, actually. But the claims against Amazon have been mostly due to their tax avoidance claims in Germany especially, because Germany is the second largest market of Amazon. But it mostly reflects the demands of the warehouse workers, actually. But overall, it's a very American leadership, which works very good. And I read they're also working in agile teams, so they have some good leadership perspectives.